Hey everybody, this is Marcus with Unexplained Mississippi here, and we're finally doing a follow-up video to last year's YouTube video that I did called Nephilim Giants in Mississippi. And in that video, if you'll remember, we talked about the possibility that there were giants here in Mississippi. We talked about the possibility of certain Indian mounds being built by the Nephilim. We talked about Native Americans such as the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians having encounters with these giants and how most of the time it did not go well and it did not end well. So at that time I had talked about doing a little series of these videos, and that's what this is. This is kind of a follow-up. Now, back in July, I went back to Winterville Mounds for the first time in about a year, and I filmed a lot of footage walking around the mounds, and that's the footage that you're looking at and seeing here. So what you're going to see in this footage is a Winterville main mound, mound number A, apparently fully restored and back to its state from hundreds of years ago. The Plaquemine culture built these mounds, and part of why I was here and why I continue to come back now is because I have to wonder, did the Plaquemine Indians around 1200 CE, did they do all this work by themselves? You don't want to be disrespectful, and I certainly don't want to be disrespectful to the Native American peoples and say that they did not. We know that Native American cultures and peoples built mounds. There's no question of that. But when you start looking at some of these great big huge mounds like Cahokia and other places, you have to wonder, did those Native American peoples, did they have help? Were they building these mounds at the behest and control of somebody or something else? And that's the question that I have to ask. That is the question that I am asking. This is a theory. This is something that I feel is very probable. And yes, it is of a biblical nature. And let me state right now, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a pastor, and I'm not an archaeologist. I am a cryptid investigator who is looking into theories and possibilities as to why we have the creatures running around such as Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Dogman, some of these other cryptids. That is there another reason for their existence? And that is just a theory that I have followed up, and a lot of other investigators have led the way on, such as Ron Moorhead and Scott Carpenter, just to name a few, that they feel that there's the possibility that these creatures are the offspring and the descendants of the Nephilim. So is Winterville Mound, was this a place, being as huge and as big as it is, this place originally had like 23 mounds. This was a huge complex. Is it possible that the Nephilim were there with the Plaquemine people and helping them build these mounds, or were making the Plaquemine culture build these mounds? Is that a possibility? And I consider it a possibility. Again, it's a theory. Again, not to take anything away from our Native American, friends and neighbors that they didn't build the mounds. But we do know this, and we have this from the Native Americans themselves. The Choctaw, the Chickasaw, a lot of other native cultures from across the Americas, they will tell you that their oral tradition from way back, when asked by the Spanish, the French, the English, whoever, right down to this very day, when you ask them, did your people build this? Did they have a hand in the construction of these huge, monstrous size mounds? And they will tell you, no, we did not. These mounds were already here when we got here. And the same thing is true for Winterville mounds. The Choctaw and the Chickasaw, especially the Choctaw, will tell you, no, we did not build the mounds at Winterville. We appreciate them and we respect them, but Nanawaya is where we focus our history and our mound building, because that's so sacred to us as a Choctaw people. So, again, as a cryptid investigator and a cryptid researcher, I got on this trail because of various researchers that whose work I began listening to and following and getting into. Could the creatures that we see, again, like Sasquatch and Dogman, these lizard men type creatures, could they be the offspring, the descendants of the Nephilim? Because we know that they were here. The Choctaw and the Chickasaw have confirmed that when they moved into Mississippi, Tennessee, and places like that, they encountered these huge giants. Red hair, 6 fingers. They were very bestial, warlike. They were sexually perverse. They did cruel, inhumane things to their women and children. Of course, I have to kind of watch what I say with YouTube here, but these creatures were not good beings. Now, there are reports that some of them were not this way, but they are in the minority. Most of them were very warlike, and they were conquerors, and they subjugated the peoples that they encountered and came into contact with. The Choctaw and Chickasaw, certainly for here in Mississippi, as they stayed in their oral traditions, they went to war with these creatures, and they destroyed them, and I quote, every chance that we had, unquote. They knew that these things had to go. So, just to review in brief, what is a Nephilim? According to the Bible, Genesis chapter 6, the Nephilim are the offspring of angels who came down from heaven. They broke away from what God had told them to do, which was to watch over and help mankind and protect them, keep them safe. They came down because they saw that the women of that time, they were beautiful, they were pretty, they were alluring, and they began lusting after them. So they came down, they mated with these human women, and their offspring was the Nephilim, these giants. There are reports from different apocryphal books, and really from all over the world when you stop and look at it. Just about every nation across the globe has giant tales and mythologies and stories in it. So these Nephilim were huge, evil creatures. They ranged in size from 7, 8, 10 feet all the way up to 30, 35 feet tall. There were accounts of them possibly being even bigger, even larger. And they were evil. They drank blood. They were deviant in their sexual practices. They did horrible, cruel things to the men, women, and children. It was bad. And if you look at this from a biblical standpoint, and again, I'm not trying to offend anybody. I don't want to offend anybody. This is just, my wheelhouse. This is my belief. And this is just something that I'm throwing out there as a theory. Things got so bad, I really feel that the human race was teetering right there on the edge. Certainly there in the Middle East, perhaps even on a global scale, mankind was just about on the verge of being completely wiped out and destroyed by these creatures. And they had done so much damage, they had done so much to mankind, they had polluted the gene pool so badly that, again, according to the Bible, God had to take things in hand. And that brought on the cataclysm that is the flood. A flood that, yet again, like giants, is inside the culture of almost every country, every nation around the globe. The Native American Indians, the Chinese, the Japanese, Hindu, Muslim, they all have a flood record in their history, in their legends, in their myths and all. Same thing with giants. They had that as well. So the flood comes and it basically wipes everything down to zero. The only ones that survived were the humans and the animals that were on board the ark with Noah. So we know, however, again, according to Genesis, as Genesis chapter 6 points out, they were on the earth in those days, the days of Noah, and after. So that means after the flood, the Nephilim came back. We don't know exactly how they came back. We don't know for sure how they returned. Was there a second incursion? Did more fallen angels come down and mate with more human females? That's my theory. I also have a new theory that we will talk about in another video as to how the Nephilim may have survived, how some of them may have survived the flood. But I'm operating under the theory that the Nephilim were brought back to planet Earth with a second fallen angel incursion. So with the return of the Nephilim after the flood, things headed right back down the same path as they had before the flood. The Nephilim went right back to doing what they were doing the first time, and it would seem that they had even more help from their angelic fallen angel fathers. And the hub of where they were, according to the Bible, was the land of Canaan, the promised land. So when God sent Joshua and Caleb into the land to spy, they came back and said, yes, these things are back. They're here. We were like grasshoppers to them. But there were other things that they saw, other monstrosities that these fallen angels and the Nephilim had mated with. It wasn't just human, it was all sorts of wildlife, animals, reptiles. This again was turning into a nightmare. This was the stuff of horror movies. So God sent his people into the land of Canaan, and he says, you got to wipe them out. They've got to be destroyed. We can't let these things continue on and It's a horrible thing, but anything that's living in those lands, they must be destroyed for the sake of humanity. And there was another reason too, which involved the Messiah, the prophecy of him coming. So these things have got to go. They've got to be wiped out. So Joshua led the Israelites and their armies, and they went to war, and they started fighting these things, and they started bringing them down. Now, the Nephilim, not being idiots and dummies, and their fathers not being idiots and dummies, the powers and abilities of angels is nearly uncalculable. They are very powerful, they're very smart, and they can do a lot of things that's way beyond mine and your comprehension. And probably the Nephilim could as well. So the Nephilim, realizing that their days were numbered, it is my theory, along with other researchers, that they fled the promised land. They fled the land of Canaan, and they took to ships, they took to boats, and they went all across the globe. They ended up in South America, they ended up in North America, they ended up all over the place. So that brings us back here to Mississippi. Without a question, again, we know that according to the Choctaw and the Chickasaw and all these other modern tribes that are still here with us today, that these giants were here. They fought them, they went to war with them, and they eventually were wiped out. They were eventually taken down and done away with. Is it possible that some of these giants are still alive and here today? When you look at the story of the Kandahar giant and how the United States military supposedly killed one of these things, I think back in the 80s, it's possible that maybe there are still some giants here, and maybe perhaps they're able to survive underground or something along that line. But anyway, we know that the giants and the Nephilim, these creatures were here. So here we are at Winterville Mound. Was this Nephilim technology? Is this Nephilim technology that we are looking at? I feel that it's possible, if not likely, that yes, that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at Nephilim architecture and fallen angel technology. That's just my view. I'm not speaking for anybody else. This is just what my research and my thoughts and my digging have led me to believe. Again, I don't know. I do not know. I cannot say that that's what we're looking at here. I'm saying that it's maybe a possibility. I'm saying that's what I think it is. I think that this is, Nephilim architecture and fallen angel technology. That's just Marcus. But that being said, let's look at some of the evidence real quick about giants here in the United States. And in one of our next videos, we'll talk about giants specifically here in Mississippi, because there is documentation, and I'll give you a few examples of that in just a moment, about giants being here in Mississippi. Back in 2016, there was an archaeological dig that was performed at Winterville Mound. And the director who was heading up the dig there, he did an interview. And I'm not going to mention his name, but It's on the internet. You can find it. But I don't want to use his name without his permission. But I am going to quote something that he said when he was asked about these mounds and what he thought they were, and some of his thoughts and theories on what they were. One thing that he pointed out was, and I have to be careful using this word, that there were ceremonies. There were possible. Let me get that straight. There were possible ceremonies there that took place that involved not being alive, unlived, I'll just say it like that. Now, he didn't say if this was like something sacrificial. He didn't make that clear, and that's where we're going to leave that. We're not going to leave that as being that's what he was saying, because he just put that out there, that there were ceremonies there that involved not being alive. I will let you fill in the blank there as to what I'm trying to say. Again, you have to be careful at times with YouTube and the words and things that you say. So they point out, or he points out, that they really don't know a whole lot about why this place was built. It was ceremonial. It was probably a place of leadership. But there's still a lot of mystery as to exactly what Winterville was all about. So one thing that he was asked about was the building of the mounds. And this is what he said. Now, the last part of what he says to me is very, very telling, because he throws a question mark into what was going on there. And this is what he says, and I quote, "So is it correct to say the Choctaws built these mounds? No, but it is correct to say that some of their ancestors undoubtedly did, or maybe not." Now, there's that part that gets thrown into question here. And he says, or maybe not. Maybe they didn't. And he kind of laughed it off. But let's add this. When you look at the evidence, the things that were found in the dig and what was going on in the surrounding areas, there is not a lot of evidence to support a large residential population, at this site and in other sites. The Plaquemines were scattered all around Winterville. There does not appear to be just a huge amount of Native Americans there to have handled all this dirt work, all this architecture, the supply chain, the feeding, the clothing, the watering, to get such mounds, especially Mound A, to get this thing built. Again, is it more than likely that the Plaquemines did this? Absolutely. I absolutely feel the Plaquemines did this. I'm just wondering and questioning, did they not have help? Or were they doing this because they didn't have any choice to do it? Were they under the duress and the direction of Nephilims that had came into the territory, had taken over the surrounding populations, and were making them build these mounds to worship, to be worshiped, and to show homage to their fallen angel fathers? I think that is a possibility. Again, I do not know that. That is just something that I am putting out there, and it's something that a lot of other researchers from other states have done, especially with mounds that are even bigger and more massive than this mound here at Winterville. Now, the Smithsonian Institution, in conclusion, is one of the main governmental bodies that says and completely rejects, poo-poos off, throws in the garbage, anything to do with giants. They will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. They don't like it. They don't believe in it. They will not support it, and they will deny and fight, kick, and scratch anything to do with giants. But here's the facts. Inside their very own reports, the very reports that their field agents, their archaeologists, their researchers that went to all these states and did all these digs, found all this evidence. This stuff went back to the Smithsonian Institution, and it wound up, whether they wanted it to or not, these people that were fighting against it, whether they wanted it to or not, it ended up in their reports. There are a series of Smithsonian annual reports that you can go find, that you can download, read, and study, and they are from the years 1873, 1875, 1877, and the 12th annual report of the Bureau of Ethnology from 1890 to 1891, which was published in 1894. And inside these reports, guess what? There are reports of giants. So there you have it, right there in their very own reports. There are reports of giants, giant skeletons, giant bones, skulls that were so big that you could fit them down over your skull and still have plenty of room to move your head around in. Huge, long femurs that were not of your typical human being. So these are right there in the Smithsonian reports. And I'll say this, the Smithsonian Institution, when it was first created, it was created to tell the truth. The people who funded it, and we'll talk about this in another video, it was created to tell the truth. It was created to tell it like it was, to report what they were finding, no matter how strange, how odd, how normal. That's what the Smithsonian set out to do in the beginning, but eventually they got hijacked. And as I stated a second ago, we'll talk about that later. So the Smithsonian Institution has led a wave of cover-ups, denials, and the obfuscation of the truth. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Because there's too many reports out there, there's too many newspaper articles, too many archaeologists and people who found these giant bones and skeletons. And this is worldwide, not just here in the United States. There are reports of giant bones being found here in Mississippi. Again, a topic that we will talk about later. So, to conclude this video, what are we talking about here? Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We're talking about a theory that I have, and again, as others have, about the Nephilim, and is it possible that some of these cryptids that people are encountering and reporting today, are they the descendants of some of these creatures? I think that is a possibility. Does it account for everything? No, it does not. Not in my opinion. It does not account for everything. But knowing what we know, knowing that there were giants here in the United States, knowing that there were giants here in Mississippi, according to the Choctaw and Chickasaw, I feel that it's a very strong possibility that mounds, earthworks, maybe Winterville, especially Mound A, were Nephilim architecture and fallen angel technology. We'll talk more about some of this in a little more in-depth in a future video. So this is Marcus. I'm going to sign off here. And again, this footage here that you're looking at, I filmed this back in July of this year, 2025, on my return to Winterville Mounds, and it's absolutely beautiful. Let me say this real quick before we go. There's nothing spooky, frightening, or terrifying about going to Winterville Mounds. This is one of the gems of the state of Mississippi. It's kind of like Sky Lake. This place is gorgeous, it's clean, it's well kept. The state of Mississippi is doing an outstanding job on keeping this place alive. They're constantly working and fixing on it. I'm hearing that there's more renovations to be done to some of the mounds and all out here. It looks like Mound A is complete. I'm not for sure, unless there's some little things that they're going to go back and work on. But the state of Mississippi is doing an outstanding job. So what I'm saying is, take your family to Winterville Mounds. Make a day of it. Have a picnic. Go out there and look at these huge things. And just when you're standing there in front of Mound A and you're looking up at this 55-foot tall behemoth and this huge ceremonial ramp, just ask yourself, just stop and think. It took hundreds of tons of dirt to build this thing. And ask yourself, could a group of Indians using primitive deer shoulder picks and weaved baskets, could they have built something that huge? That's what I want you to ask yourself. Because me standing there in front of this Indian mound, looking up at this and seeing how tall, how wide, how deep, and how long this thing is, it blows my mind every time I look at it. And I have to walk away and I have to tell myself, no matter how much I might want to fight and resist it, no matter how much people will say, no, the Native Americans did that. No matter how badly I want to listen to people like the Smithsonian and the absolute untruths, I'll say it like that they are pushing. No matter how I want to believe that, I can't do it. I simply cannot do it. And again, if you go, and I hope and pray that you will, because it's a beautiful spot, it needs your support. I don't believe if you stand there and look at this thing all the way around it, how big and how huge it is. And when you go look at mounds like Cahokia, and this is on par with that. When you look at these places and your Native American friends and neighbors are telling you, we didn't build that. That was already here when we got here. We don't know how that was done. When you stand there and you look at that, I think you're going to come away with the same thoughts that I am. The Native Americans had to have had some help doing something of this scale. So for Unexplained Mississippi, this is Marcus. I hope you've enjoyed this part 2 of Nephilim Giants in Mississippi. There'll be more to come. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Tell your friends. And I hope every one of you, again, has enjoyed this. And I hope you all have a blessed day. And you take care of yourselves. And God bless. Catch you later.